My friend's mom smiled, leaned closer, and whispered. "Close the door, and let me have my fun." I froze, and something inside me knew this was just the beginning. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon when I found myself at my friend's house, just helping out with some small chores he had dumped on me. He was out running errands, leaving me alone with the hum of the house, the faint ticking of a clock, and the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. That's when I noticed her. His mom, in her early 40s, moved around the kitchen with a kind of quiet confidence that made even the mundane seem graceful. The way she bent to pick up a dish, the soft sway of her hair catching the sunlight streaming through the window, I couldn't help but notice. She smiled briefly at me, a small, knowing curve of her lips that lingered longer than it should have. It wasn't flirtation, exactly, but it held a warmth that tugged at something in me. I tried to focus on my task, wiping down the counter, arranging dishes, but I couldn't ignore the way her presence seemed to fill the room. There was a lightness to the way she moved, the subtle confidence in her posture, that made the space feel different, charged in a quiet, almost imperceptible way. She called over to me, her voice playful, though casual, "Be careful with that, you might drop it." I glanced up, and our eyes met for a moment longer than polite. There was something about the steady, calm look in her eyes, the unspoken depth behind them, that made me acutely aware of my own heartbeat. Her glance wasn't heavy-handed, it was teasing, light, but it left a trail, a whisper of something I didn't understand yet. As I handed her a plate, her fingers brushed mine, just barely, but enough to send a strange shiver up my arm. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, the brush of a hand in a cramped kitchen could happen to anyone, but I couldn't shake the small thrill that accompanied it. My mind raced, trying to categorize the feeling, admiration, respect, attraction. Maybe all three. The air smelled faintly of brewed coffee and something sweet from a small tray of pastries she had left on the counter. Sunlight spilled across her shoulder as she leaned slightly, examining a recipe card. The warmth of the room, the gentle hum of quiet domestic life, made the moment feel intimate in a way that surprised me. I realized I was watching her more closely than I had intended, noticing the subtle grace in her gestures, the softness in her laugh when she muttered something to herself. I kept my hands busy, wiping the counter again, pretending not to notice the way my gaze lingered. And yet, every time she spoke, every small movement, I felt a tug in my chest, a quiet curiosity, a subtle pull that made me wonder how someone could be so composed, so self-assured, yet make me feel like I was tiptoeing on the edge of something I wasn't sure I should explore. By the time my friend came back, I was acutely aware of every detail about her, the gentle curl of her hair, the confident ease of her movements, the faint sparkle of mischief in her eyes, and I knew that this was only the beginning. Something unspoken had shifted in the air between us, a quiet tension that promised the slow burn of a connection that could not be ignored. The day had settled into a kind of comfortable rhythm, the soft hum of the refrigerator in the background and the muted ticking of the wall clock keeping time in the quiet house. I found myself in the living room, tidying up a few things while my friend's mom lingered nearby. She was moving gracefully, organizing books on the shelf and dusting surfaces, but she had that playful air about her that made every casual glance feel significant. "Careful there," she said, her voice light, teasing, as I tried to stack a pile of magazines neatly. "If you keep frowning like that, the magazines might sense your tension and fall on their own." I looked up, startled by her sudden comment, and she gave me that little smirk that somehow made the words feel personal. I could hear the soft rustle of her movements, the faint shuffle of her feet on the wooden floor, and I realized I was paying too much attention. I tried to laugh it off, but my chest felt tighter than it should, a small, inexplicable warmth spreading through me. "You always take things so seriously," she added, her tone teasing but not unkind. "Do you ever just relax?" Her question caught me off guard. I shifted the magazines in my hands, unsure how to respond, and she took a step closer, just enough that the space between us seemed smaller, more intimate. The faint scent of her perfume reached me, subtle, floral, warm, and it made my senses alert. I was keenly aware of every detail, the soft curve of her shoulder as she leaned to adjust a photo frame, the way her hair fell across her cheek, and the sparkle in her eyes when she caught me staring. When I finally managed a small laugh, she chuckled in response, a low, melodious sound that filled the room. Her eyes crinkled at the corners, and for a brief moment, she looked younger than her age, almost like she had shared a secret with me alone. There was a rhythm to her presence, a push and pull that made me want to linger near her, even as my mind reminded me of boundaries. At one point, our shoulders brushed accidentally while reaching for the same book. Neither of us pulled away immediately. I could feel the faint warmth of her arm, the natural softness of her skin under the sleeve of her sweater. That fleeting contact lingered in my mind long after it happened, a quiet reminder of the subtle tension growing between us. We began to trade small jabs, playful teasing that skirted the edge of flirtation. "You're hopeless at folding laundry," she said, tilting her head with a mischievous grin. "Maybe you need lessons." "I think I'm fine," I replied, though my voice was uneven, betraying a nervous excitement I couldn't hide. Her laughter followed me as I moved to another corner, and I realized just how much I wanted to hear it, to see her smile, to exist in the same space with her without overthinking it. Every word, every gesture, every glance was building a quiet, electric tension, a connection that was playful yet charged with unspoken possibilities. By the time my friend returned home, the light banter and accidental touches had left me in a state of heightened awareness. I knew, even then, that the teasing and playful exchanges weren't just for fun, they were the first threads of something deeper, a slow, irresistible pull that neither of us fully understood yet. The day had a quiet rhythm that made the smallest things feel amplified. I was in the hallway, trying to fix a loose hinge on a cabinet, crouched awkwardly with a screwdriver in hand, when I heard the soft sound of footsteps behind me. Before I could straighten up, she appeared, leaning just slightly into the narrow space beside me. "Here, let me help," she said gently, her voice calm yet commanding enough that I instinctively handed her the screwdriver. Her fingers brushed mine briefly as she took it, and though it was a fleeting touch, I felt a curious spark run through me. It wasn't overwhelming, but it was enough to make my chest tighten for a heartbeat longer than I expected. She knelt down beside me, her proximity close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her. The faint scent of her perfume, floral, warm, and subtly sweet, drifted around me. My senses seemed to sharpen, noticing the softness of her sweater brushing against my arm, the subtle shift in her weight as she leaned over the hinge. I could feel her focus on the task, yet there was something unspoken in the air, a quiet intimacy in the closeness of our bodies. "Hold this steady," she instructed, her hand gently guiding mine. The contact was light but deliberate, her fingers resting briefly over mine. I could feel the pulse of her energy through the small connection, a reminder that she was near, and that every simple gesture seemed layered with meaning. I tried to concentrate on the hinge, on the mechanical task at hand, but my mind kept wandering to her, to the subtle curve of her smile, the glint in her eyes when she caught me watching her, and the way her presence seemed to fill the room. For a moment, we paused, our hands still touching as she adjusted the alignment. Neither of us spoke immediately. The quiet of the hallway made every sound, the soft creak of the floorboards, the faint hum of the house, the rhythm of our breathing, feel more intimate. Her gaze met mine, and I noticed a brief, almost mischievous smile playing at her lips. It wasn't flirtation in a bold sense, but it carried the kind of energy that made me acutely aware of the growing tension between us. "Almost there," she murmured softly, leaning a little closer to inspect her work. The warmth of her body was unmistakable, and the accidental brush of her shoulder against mine lingered in a way that made my heart skip. I realized that even in this mundane moment, fixing a cabinet hinge, there was something unspoken developing between us. A connection that didn't need words, carried entirely through small touches, quiet movements, and the electricity in the spaces between us. Finally, the hinge clicked into place. She straightened, brushing her hands on her jeans casually, but the subtle pause as she looked at me suggested she had felt it too, the unspoken pull, the quiet spark that had passed between us. I stood there, heart racing, suddenly hyper-aware of her presence and the small, delicate way she had made even a simple task feel intimate. By the time my friend returned from his errands, I was left with the echo of that closeness lingering in my chest, a reminder that the slow-burn tension had taken another step forward, quietly, irreversibly, in the intimacy of accidental proximity. By mid-afternoon, the house seemed to shrink around us, as if the walls themselves were aware of the tension simmering quietly in the air. My friend was out again, leaving me alone with his mom for just long enough that the day took on an unusual intimacy. I was folding laundry in the corner of the living room, trying to focus on the mundane task, when I felt her presence beside me. "Careful," she said, leaning casually against the doorway. "Don't let the socks escape. They're slippery little devils, you know." Her tone was playful, teasing, but there was a glint in her eye that made me pause. I tried to hide the flutter in my chest, pretending to smooth out a wrinkled shirt, but I could feel the heat creeping up my neck. Then came the words that made my heart stumble: "Close the door, and let me have my fun." She said it as lightly as one might comment on the weather, yet the phrasing hung in the room between us like a secret. The playful tone suggested she was joking, but my mind, unhelpful as always, was already spiraling into possibilities. She stepped closer, brushing past me just enough that her shoulder grazed mine. The contact was brief, accidental in appearance, but I felt it deeply, a warmth radiating, a pulse of electricity in that small, fleeting touch. My hand froze mid-fold, the fabric slipping through my fingers as I tried to compose myself. She didn't notice, or perhaps she did, but her smile remained teasingly calm. The sunlight through the window fell across her hair, catching highlights in shades of gold and chestnut. I noticed how her movements were effortless, graceful, yet there was an energy beneath it, something unspoken, that made the moment feel intimate. Her perfume lingered subtly in the air, warm and inviting, blending with the faint scent of fresh laundry and the soft hum of the house. "You always look so serious," she added, leaning slightly closer to straighten a shirt on the pile. "Relax a little, or you'll wrinkle everything with tension." Her fingers brushed mine again, just the tips, lingering long enough for my heart to skip. I wanted to move, to retreat, but I couldn't. There was something magnetic about her presence, a quiet force that held me in place. Her teasing wasn't just playful, it was deliberate, a slow, careful dance of proximity and words that made the mundane feel charged. Every glance, every brush of her hand, every softly spoken word carried a tension I couldn't ignore. I realized that the slow-burn attraction wasn't just mine, it was mutual, subtle, almost imperceptible, yet undeniably there. Finally, she stepped back, her eyes sparkling with amusement, and the room seemed to exhale with her. I tried to steady myself, still acutely aware of the lingering warmth of her presence and the playful tension that had settled over the room. That brief, teasing encounter left me breathless, aware that we had crossed an invisible line, a line defined not by actions, but by the quiet electricity of touch, glance, and unspoken possibility. And in that moment, I knew the slow burn wasn't just beginning, it was already in motion, growing in subtle, tantalizing ways that neither of us could ignore. Later that afternoon, the playful teasing had given way to a quieter, softer rhythm. I found myself in the kitchen again, this time sitting at the small breakfast table while she moved about, preparing tea. The sunlight slanted through the blinds, casting warm stripes across the room, and the faint aroma of brewed tea mixed with the lingering scent of her perfume. The atmosphere felt intimate, private, as though the house itself had paused to let this moment exist. She set a steaming cup in front of me, her fingers brushing mine slightly as she placed it down. The contact was light, fleeting, but it sent a subtle warmth through me. I glanced up at her, and for a brief moment, I noticed something different, a softness in her eyes, a hint of fatigue behind her composed exterior. The playful spark was still there, but now there was a vulnerability that made her seem more real, more human, and inexplicably more magnetic. "I don't usually talk about this," she said quietly, almost to herself, as she leaned against the counter. Her voice was calm, steady, but I could hear a hint of hesitation. "Sometimes, life gets a little overwhelming. And I guess I just don't like showing it." She paused, looking down at the counter for a moment, then back at me. "But you seem to notice things, even the little things. That's rare." I felt a pang of empathy, my chest tightening in response. I wanted to say something comforting, reassuring, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I nodded, letting my gaze linger on her, taking in the subtle vulnerability that rarely surfaced. There was something deeply human in her moment of honesty, a side of her that few ever got to see. Her fingers lightly brushed the edge of my cup as she moved to pour her own tea, and the smallest spark of contact traveled through me. It was electric, yet grounding, a gentle reminder that connection didn't always need grand gestures. The quiet intimacy of shared space, shared presence, felt more potent than any overt action could. She spoke again, softer this time. I guess I like having someone around who doesn't make everything complicated. Someone who can just be. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, the teasing and playful energy melted into something warmer, more honest. There was no hidden agenda here, just a genuine moment of connection. I realized then that the slow burn between us wasn't just about attraction or tension. It was about understanding, empathy, noticing the small details, the way she sipped her tea, the faint laugh that escaped when she caught my gaze, the subtle tension in her shoulders that relaxed slightly when I smiled. When she finally sat down across from me, leaning back in her chair with a small, appreciative smile, I felt a quiet swell of emotion. The room, the sunlight, the faint scent of tea and her perfume, and the unspoken acknowledgement between us created a moment that felt suspended in time. I knew that this was more than playful teasing or accidental touches. This was the foundation of something deeper, a slow-burn intimacy that was steadily taking root in the unspoken spaces between us. And in that moment, I understood that the real connection wasn't just about proximity or attraction. It was about trust, vulnerability, and the quiet knowledge that we were beginning to see each other in a way no one else did. The evening had a soft, golden haze, the kind of light that made everything seem quieter, warmer, more intimate. I found myself sitting on the couch in the living room, absent-mindedly scrolling through my phone, though I wasn't really paying attention to it. Across the room, she was perched on the arm of a chair, casually flipping through a magazine, but even in that ordinary moment, she radiated a presence I couldn't ignore. Our eyes met briefly, and she gave me that small, knowing smile that always seemed to speak volumes without words. I noticed the gentle curve of her shoulder, the subtle way her hair fell across her face, and the quiet grace in her posture. My chest tightened just slightly, a flutter that reminded me how magnetic her presence had become. We sat there for a while, the silence stretching comfortably between us. There was no need for words, the room itself seemed to hold them in suspension. The faint hum of the ceiling fan, the soft creak of the couch as I shifted, the occasional rustle of the magazine pages, every small sound seemed amplified, intimate, connecting us in ways I wasn't fully prepared to understand. At one point, she leaned slightly closer to reach for a cup of tea, and the brush of her hand against mine lingered a moment longer than necessary. That simple, fleeting contact sent a pulse of awareness through me. It wasn't just attraction, it was a recognition of the bond we had been building, subtle and deliberate, moment by moment. I realized then that this quiet closeness, these shared glances and touches, had grown into something undeniably potent. Her eyes caught mine again, softer this time, almost contemplative. "You notice things," she said quietly, her voice a low murmur that seemed meant only for me. "Even the little ones. I appreciate that." I felt warmth flood my chest, both from the compliment and the unspoken weight behind it. It wasn't just flattery, it was recognition, a quiet acknowledgement that we had begun to see each other in ways no one else did. I became acutely aware of her presence, the warmth radiating from her, the subtle scent of her perfume mingling with the evening air, the softness in her expression when she smiled at nothing in particular. Every little detail pressed into my consciousness, the gentle rise and fall of her chest, the tilt of her head, the unguarded way she let herself be present in the room with me. For the first time, I fully acknowledged the slow-burn tension between us. It wasn't urgent or desperate, it was patient, teasing, deliberate, a quiet magnetism that drew us together in small, almost imperceptible increments. My mind traced the moments leading up to this one, the playful teasing, the accidental touches, the soft confessions. Each memory carried weight now, each interaction layered with significance. By the time the evening deepened and shadows lengthened across the room, I understood something vital. This wasn't fleeting curiosity or superficial attraction. It was something more, a slow, steady recognition of connection, intimacy, and unspoken desire that neither of us could fully articulate, yet both of us felt. And in that golden quiet, with her just close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her, I realized that the slow burn had reached a point where it could no longer be ignored. The evening had settled into a calm hush, the golden light outside giving way to a soft, muted twilight. The house felt quieter now, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I found myself sitting near the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea, my mind still replaying the moments of the day, the teasing, the laughter, the fleeting touches, the shared glances. Everything had built slowly, delicately, to this quiet crescendo of emotion. She moved through the kitchen with her usual grace, pouring herself a cup of tea. The soft clink of the teacup against the saucer, the gentle hum of her movements, and the faint aroma of her perfume made the room feel cocooned in intimacy. She turned to me, a small, thoughtful smile on her lips, and in that instant, the tension that had lingered for days seemed to settle into something warm and gentle. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight that wasn't present before. "For noticing me. For being here." Her words were simple, but the pauses, the slight tremor in her tone, conveyed far more than I could ever have anticipated. I met her gaze and saw something I hadn't expected, vulnerability wrapped in quiet confidence, honesty tempered with a hint of longing. I stood, moving closer, feeling the gentle warmth of the room wrap around me. For a moment, we simply looked at each other, neither speaking, letting the silence carry what words never could. And then she did something small but powerful. She reached out and placed a hand lightly on my shoulder. The touch was fleeting but deliberate, grounding me in the shared presence, in the unspoken understanding that had grown between us. Her eyes held mine, steady, open, unguarded. I enjoy having you here," she whispered, almost shyly. The playful teasing, the subtle provocations, the quiet intimacy of earlier moments had led to this, a tender acknowledgement of connection, a gentle acceptance of the slow burn that had been simmering beneath the surface. I smiled, my heart swelling, and responded with the only words that felt right. "I enjoy it too, being here, with you." The simplicity of the statement held everything: admiration, affection, respect, and a quiet desire that didn't need to be spoken aloud. She leaned slightly closer, just enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her. Our proximity wasn't bold or overt, but it was intimate, the kind of closeness that lingers in memory, the kind that imprints on the heart. Her hand slipped from my shoulder to the back of my hand, a small, deliberate gesture of comfort and connection. I held her gaze, noticing the way her lips curved in a soft, knowing smile, and the faint glint in her eyes that mirrored my own quiet longing. Finally, she straightened, stepping back with a gentle laugh, the tension dissipating into warmth and ease. "I suppose this is goodbye, for now," she said, though the words didn't carry finality. There was an unspoken promise in the lingering look, in the gentle pressure of her hand as it slipped from mine, that this connection wasn't fleeting. I walked away feeling light, yet profoundly aware of the subtle bond that had formed. The slow burn tension had resolved not in urgency, but in quiet understanding, in tenderness, in the shared knowledge that we had noticed each other, truly noticed, in ways that mattered. And in that warm, golden twilight, I realized that some connections, no matter how unexpected, leave a mark that stays long after the moment has passed. If you felt the slow burn tension and subtle romance in this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more age gap and slow burn romance tales. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of heartfelt connection and emotional twists. And comment below, which part of this story had your heart racing the most?